Am I live? Can you guys hear me okay?
Okay.
Great. So this is going to be the first fireside of the day, and it's going to be a really fun one for me. As a member of the press, I never really get a chance to talk about funding or to hear about funding. As a moderator, when I came in, they kind of ushered me into the backstage area, and then realizing a lot of people were doing very important business, and I was promptly asked to leave as a member of the press. So this is going to be a really fun way to kind of discuss funding and getting funded and funding others. And I hope it's as useful for you guys as it is for me. So I would like our panelists just to quickly introduce themselves.
Okay, my name is Susanna. As some of you might have already seen, I'm the CEO of Paradox Interactive. We both fund in other teams and games, and we've also had outside investors fund in our company.
Yes, I'm Thorsteinn Friðriksson. I'm the founder and CEO of Plain Vanilla Games, who are the makers of QuizUp. Plain Vanilla is a venture-backed company, mostly by US and Chinese investors. And yeah, that's me.
Hi, I'm Helga Valfells. I'm a local investor here in Iceland, and I think after Isaac Cato's presentation, I aspire to be an old bag rather than a bad disease. And we have a portfolio of 34 sort of local Icelandic companies that all have international traction.
Yes, hello. My name is Samuli. I actually come from Finland, and I used to be an entrepreneur. I founded 4 game studios, and last year I actually became an investor. We have a new investment company called CEO Ventures that's 100% focused on games and game companies. And we are actually set up in a very different way. We are evergreen, and I'm very much looking forward to meeting all the local game studios and see what they have.
Okay, hello. My name is Andre. I'm a co-founder and technical visionary at Betware, an online gaming company. I also work for Reykjavik University, trying to make some programmers for the game studios here. I've been on the board of IGI since 2009, so I've been working a lot with the local game studios, trying to get them hooked up with investors, trying to connect people. Then I'm also co-founding Raw Fury, an indie publisher. It's kind of an oxymoron, indie publisher, but you know, it kind of works. And then I'm doing some investing of my own.
So since this isn't my area of expertise, I asked our panelists to send over some notes earlier, and I always assumed that when someone was investing in a company, they were looking primarily at the product. What really surprised me was how many people came back that the importance was the team, that they needed to know about chemistry, about how well people work together. So I would love someone to just jump in and give us some thoughts on what you look for in a team, and how do you kind of litmus test for positive chemistry?
So of course, the team needs to have enough vision and experience to actually make games. And for an investor, it's also important for the team to have some business sense. Of course, there's a place in the world for the craziest and most creative indie developers. That's where the best innovation usually comes from. But for me personally, I just love working with creative people, and I've been one myself for 2 decades. So if I mesh well with the team, I think I can get the most out of them and almost feel like a part of their team in a way, as much as they want me to be there. And a very important thing for me is as well to see them in action. So if a new team comes in front of me and says, "We just founded a new game studio, can you give us millions?" I'll be like, okay, what do you have? I mean, how can you prove that you actually know how to make games? And if they show me a prototype that doesn't convince me, or they don't have a prototype at all, that's one sign that there's something maybe missing here. But if they've been existing for 2 weeks and they can show me 4 excellent prototypes, then I'm usually very much sold. And yeah.
I agree. I think the investors should look primarily at the team. But you talked about prototype. I also think that when I see pitches or people coming up with, for example, ideas for a game or an app, I think that there are 2 things I always look for as well. I think they're very important. It's the team, first of all, of course, but then there is the presentation. And that when I say presentation, it means the prototype, or just generally how well the team or the founder prepares themselves for the pitch. I've seen so many pitches where people have some ideas and they kind of throw it up on a template PowerPoint slide. And I know that everyone should tell you, it doesn't matter. It's the core of the idea that matters. The presentation isn't everything. But when I see a team that really puts a lot of effort into a demo and really makes beautiful small details in the PowerPoint slides and has great transitions and all of these small details, it just doesn't show that they're good at selling the product to the investors. It just shows that they have attention to detail, and it just shows that they're ready to go the whole distance. So I think the presentation itself is really important, and something I think that a lot of entrepreneurs kind of put on the sideline because they think the idea is number one. And the second of all that I always look for, especially in gaming, that's the go-to-market strategy. Because the noise in the gaming industry is so much, especially in the app business, where you have millions of apps available. I always look for, when I ask like an entrepreneur, so how are you going to sell this? How are you going to get noticed? You have to have some reliable go-to-market strategy, because it's not enough to have a good game. It doesn't sell itself. You have to have a strategy for that. So those are like the three themes that I look for, at least.
I think it's really interesting that you mentioned the presentation, because I would actually say the exact opposite. Okay. I always get a little bit skeptical when people have spent too much time on the presentation and not enough time thinking about the execution of the idea. But I hear what you're
disagree
saying.
More.
But that's fine. It's interesting to have the two different perspectives.
Sure.
I think for us, the one thing that we look at as well is a great idea is fantastic, but unless you're able to execute it into something that's actually going to reach the market at some stage, then it's really hard to make value out of that idea. So that would be one thing that we look at, track record. But it's interesting to bring different perspectives to the table.
I think we agree to some extent that the idea itself, when I'm talking about the presentation, I'm not talking about the idea, it's how you present it. And to see how you present the idea is an indication of how you're able to execute it and get it to the market. That's my view, at least.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification, and I agree more now.
Yeah, and I sort of want to second what Þorsteinn said as well. I think especially in the gaming industry, we invest across the board, but I think we've seen some gaming presentations where the visuals are really bad, and you think gaming is based on graphics and visuals. So if you can't make pretty slides in gaming, when can you make a pretty game or an attractive game? So I think that in gaming, at least, I think the slides matter. I think in some other businesses that we look at, it doesn't matter. Also, I think for us, we're a very early stage investor, but we start looking at, and this is one of the nice things about being a local investor here in Iceland, we invest in Icelandic teams that are going to go global, is we can watch the teams from a very early stage. And I think even maybe a year before we invest, we can start seeing the teams form, and we can see if they're executing or not. And there are a lot of teams that get grants and then they don't do anything with the grant, and we see other teams that get very small grants and they go a very long way, and you think these are people that actually know how to build a business and do something.
Yeah, my experience actually with gamers is that they don't know how to make good presentations. They suck at it. They may be good at making games, but I usually end up, when I sit through these pitch meetings, I usually end up criticizing the presentation itself, the use of fonts and stuff like that. And then I go and try to dig out, what is this game? Is this unique, or is this just another shitty game that everybody else is making, or is it something really new? Is it adding a value to the world? So these are things that I look for also, apart from the team.
Many times I have seen really shitty-looking demos or prototypes, but they have had some kind of unique element that I have not seen anywhere before. And of course, at that stage, if the team is very inexperienced or clearly not experienced enough to take it to market, what I usually try to do, encourage them as much as possible, ask them to go after public support and whatnot, and just try to coach them as much as I can so that they will be able to continue on their path and to sort of refine and develop the unique thing that they have into an actual, more mature product. And then I will meet with them again in a couple of months or half a year and see if they're still around. If they are, that means that they have stuck with it and they are persistent, and we have the Finnish saying sisu, which is like the extreme version of persistence. And if they can actually show that, then I will be very impressed. And if it's still not yet at the level where it needs to be, then I will again do the same cycle. I've done this multiple times in the last year. And out of this eventually will come companies that are mature and determined and talented enough to warrant an investment.
So one of the things here, I know a lot of people here are going to be pitching, are going to be accepting pitches, and now we know that the pitch is either the most or the least important part of it. Is there anything that when you see it is an instant red light? Any panic button that you go, I'm out? Something that people can avoid or look for before it happens?
Yeah, I have. If they have really detailed Excel sheets pasted into their presentation, I head to the door. I don't understand those numbers.
It's also, it's something you learn when you were kind of getting trained in doing pitches. I remember that I went into some, years ago, I was told that you always have to show the hockey stick. You always have to have a financial and show that you're gonna need money for this year and next year, and then you have to show that explosive growth. The problem is that it's just nonsense. I mean, we're in a very early stage company. You have no idea on that, and the problem is that everyone gets taught to do this. So every single pitch has this one slide that shows exactly the same graph. So for the investor, it's kind of like, yeah. Oh, that graph is there already. So I don't know. For the first 3 rounds of funding that Plain Vanilla went through, we didn't show a single, what's called, like a projection of that hockey stick, just because it's just kind of silly. So when I see that, that typical hockey stick, I kind of say, guys, you don't need to do that. Just tell me that the idea is worth it and you can execute it, and then we'll make our own assumptions on how it will go.
No, I agree. I'm very put off by very elaborate Excel sheets. But at the same time, as an investor, I think it's nice to see that people have thought about the cost. If in a longer pitch, it's like, this is the money that you're going to trust me with, and I'm going to make a return for you, and I'm going to use it on this, this, and this. And I know something about how to spend money. It's not that I'm just going to buy really beautiful office chairs for everybody.
I think one of the things as well that's important is to have an idea of why you want investments, why you want an investor to go into your company. It could be knowledge, it could be money, but just have a fairly clear idea, because I always say investing in a game or in a team or in a company is like a marriage, right? If you have the right expectations from the beginning, it's probably going to last for a really long time. Your relationship. If you go in and you haven't even talked about those expectations to begin with, you might have a rocky road and it might end up in divorce further on. Lastly, I just want to clarify my point about the presentations. I agree that the pitch is extremely important.
No, you just said it wasn't. No, what are you saying?
I didn't say that the pitch wasn't important. I said that the flashy graphics, and Gordon is laughing because I've had this conversation with him numerous times. The presentation itself with the flashy graphics and that's not, but the pitch, you can have a really strong pitch.
I agree,
and that's
but again, I think that investors are just people and they can be dazzled with fancy presentations. I think that's just important. Sorry.
I think
you're okay.
I think a good pitch will work in 30 seconds without any graphics.
Yeah.
Sure.
I think the other aspect of it, and I think we might be stuck on the pitch thing for a few more minutes, is that from my point of view, not even speaking as an investor, if I see a good pitch, they're going to be able to pitch to the press. They're going to be able to be at PAX or GDC.
And employees. If you're good at pitching, because it's all about the pitch, always. If you're good at pitching, you can sell your idea to investors, to get better employees, to the press, and ultimately to the users. So it's like the number one, ability to really execute it properly.
And it's obviously enough to have one person that's really good at doing it, because you could also have people in the company who have different roles, right?
Absolutely,
so.
Yeah.
I mean, whatever causes it, from charisma to a great presentation, you need to be able to make other people as excited about the idea as you are. I think that's what we're all getting at. And if you're not excited about the idea, then there's very little anyone can do to help you find a new idea and get excited about that.
Yeah. One of the things that I see gamers that are pitching fail is when they're trying to be something else that they're not. Try to go into some role. If they're just honest, tell the story that they're building and talk about the game, that's a really good pitch.
And just to plug, we're doing a marketing panel later, so we'll be talking about some of this stuff more. So we've talked about pitches a little bit. We've talked about finding the right team. Once you've gotten to that point, what are you looking for in a game? I think there is a preconceived notion that everyone is looking for that explosive free-to-play growth. Mm-hmm. Like, how easy is it to build a sustainable business or something premium from an investment point of view?
The free-to-play mobile market is so saturated now that it's extremely, almost impossible to get through anymore. That was actually one of the reasons why I merged my previous company with another Finnish free-to-play mobile game studio, because I thought that, you know, even I can't do it alone. So, you know, it really has to be something innovative that I haven't really seen before anywhere, and there has to be a business case. The people have to have at least one person who has a business mind and who is determined to make it a success of some kind. So, and one thing that should be applied to almost all the startups is like a crowdfunding campaign at the beginning, because that only validates the whole game concept, and it opens up the game to a potential fan base. And it's not actually the money that you get out of that campaign, it's actually the future marketers of your game. Mm-hmm. So if they are doing that, then that's a really, really good sign.
I try to look at trends. I study trends a lot. I research this at the university. So I try to study timelines and how things are shifting, because things are always shifting in this industry. Spaces get crowded, but then there are other spaces that are sort of left out. And so I try to move into those spaces, and I want to invest where the market is underserved, basically.
Just wanted to throw a little contentious bit in here, because I actually know very little about gaming. And as I said, we're generalist investors, and if we were to invest, we would probably want a co-investor, and we would want to syndicate with somebody that knew the gaming industry. But I also think for us, it's a socially responsible approach to gaming, because I think there are a lot of good benefits in the gaming industry, but there are also a lot of dangers. And I say this as a mother of 2 teenage boys. So it's, and one of them is a diamond League of Legends player, which I think means something. But so I think you have to sort of look at it, and I think as an investor, I think, you know, we don't just think about money; we also think about investing responsibly.
I think I mentioned this before. One of the things I look for in a pitch, and this is especially important for gaming companies, and that's the go-to-market strategy. As I said earlier, this market is so crowded that I've seen so many really well-done good games that just don't make it to the surface because people don't know about them. So I would usually look for, does that company have the potential to do partnerships with someone that they can do a pigtail on the marketing front? Can they, do they have like really strong viral or sharing mechanics inside the game? How does the game spread to the one person that likes it, and what encourages that person to tell the next person about the game? I think for gaming today, that's probably the biggest challenge.
Yeah, I agree on that. And I see here in Iceland, I talk to a lot of these game studios, and they all seems to miss this point, or most of them. They're good in tech, they have a great game, and they're just developing, and then when the game is ready, they're gonna let everybody know that they have a game. Mm-hmm. And by then they have no strategy for marketing. I see this again and again and again. You have to start thinking about how you're gonna sell the game around the similar time as you start to develop the game. And you need to put the game out there to let people know before it's ready that you're making a game.
So the problem is, I've met many game studios or startups that their marketing strategy is basically being featured by Apple. They're banking everything on that. Mm-hmm. And that very rarely happens, even for a really good, high-quality game. So it's a really tricky market out there. And that's why I'm very interested in all kinds of new areas as well, like VR, and maybe even premium games, maybe even PC console games, anything, because those markets still exist. And it might actually be better or easier to get through those markets and make a decent living and revenue and profits through that.
So one of the things I wanted people to take away from this panel is something actionable, something that can help their business today or tomorrow in the next month. Can you share some common mistakes you see from early startups that they could potentially avoid if they kind of see that landmine coming a little bit?
I don't know if this is early startup, but one thing that I've seen is, again, with the expectation setting, not talking exit plans, having different ideas on what the exit plan is when it comes to your ambitions with your games and your studio. So that's one thing that I've seen has hampered success long term.
Because we were discussing pitches earlier, sort of the worst pitch I've ever seen in my life was somebody that had outsourced their pitch to somebody who had left the business.
Yeah, that's not good.
So that's something, don't outsource your pitch. But another thing that I think is very important to think about from the beginning, and I know you don't always have a choice in this matter, is think about your fundraising strategy. Again, I think it's a really good idea. Start with a crowdfunding campaign. Get some angels involved that really know your business. Go to a VC and think about how you build your business. And I say this as we're a local sort of Icelandic investors. I know there are lots of local Nordic investors. And maybe you can get your local investor on board first. But it's also really important to think about if you want to sort of scale internationally, who are the international investors? And I think as Isaac said earlier, again, get somebody who knows about game development as your investor and really, really think about when and how you take money. And always try to get money into your business when you don't need it. Talk to investors and start talking to investors when you don't need the money.
A lot of the notes I got back were talking about funding as kind of a collaborative thing with this, continual conversation. You said scaling into international funding is very important. When that time comes, is that something you help with, or is that something you rely on the developer to do?
With all our businesses, and as I said, we actually have very little experience in games, but we have some, is we try to think about the international fundraising from day one with the team, and because we have some experience in this, and both in terms of, do you want an international exit, and also do you want to work with an international VC? So I think that's very, very important to think about from day one, and build your business so it will be attractive to an international VC.
Yeah, we always try to have like a mixture of investors at each stage of investment, including local and international investors, be they angels or institutions or whatnot. So that brings, I think, a very interesting mixture of cultural understanding and contacts globally, since we are going after a global market after all.
I think that early stage companies are often focusing on getting like one big investor to help them. In my experience, we went the totally opposite way. We got, I think, in our seed round around 30 angels to participate, which was a lot of work, granted, but it paid off so well in the end, because you will get, first of all, you won't get like one investor that's really dominant, so you kind of control yourself, but also you have like 30 networked individuals that have a skin in the game, and they've given you money, and they will do anything they can to help you. So, the best way to really create a network, and networking obviously is very important, is to get people to give you just a little bit of money, and then they'll help you, and that'll, be so valuable for you going forward and doing future rounds. And
can I ask on what criteria you chose those investors? Was there specific reasons why it became those 30?
Yes, so initially it was because they were willing to give me money.
Which is a good reason.
This is a very good reason. But as the round grew and you started to get more confident, you were able to, the leverage changed a little bit, but then it really started to be strategic. One good example in our seed round is that in our seed round we got in just in the end, when we were kind of finished, we had an offer to get some very small funding from a company called Tencent, which is a very big Chinese gaming company. And it was like early days, 3 years ago. And just last week, we released our game with Tencent in China. And that's been very successful. So that's just one kind of when you look back, how that started with this very small investment during the seed round, and then we cultivated a relationship, and they loved the product, and now it's the #1 game in China. So that's one good example of that.
Yeah, one of the mistakes that I see a lot is when gamers, they ask for too little money for too big part of their company and get diluted pretty fast, because when the company is owned by a bunch of investors and the innovators don't have so much stake anymore, it's a disaster. That's a huge mistake. You really have to think in long term, even if you stage the funding in different stages, but never get desperate in trying to raise funds and sell yourself cheap.
In Helsinki, that's actually vice versa at the moment. There's something called the Helsinki Premium, which means that if you have just left Rovio, you have 3 guys, and you go in front of any investor, you can say that, hey, we are valued at X million, and we want to raise X million. That's how it works currently in Helsinki, and that's actually one of the reasons why I'm here, because I hope you don't have a Reykjavik Premium yet.
Well, great. That's all the time we have. I'd like to say thank you to all of our panelists. Thank you, all of you, for coming out here and talking about this with us.
Thank you.